Hello there, and welcome back to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, international football, and sometimes MLS, because we're Americans. This week, Arsenal hosted Atlético Madrid for the conclusion of the Champions League semifinal round and then journeyed through London to play West Ham in our anti-penultimate Premier League match of the season. I love that word. How you doing, Keith?
I'm doing fantastic because, wait for it, we are the famous Arsenal and we're going to Hungary. We're going to the Champions League final. This is so great. I'm so excited.
I know.
Are you excited? I'm excited.
I am. No, I am. I mean, this is the second final I will have seen Arsenal compete in ever, and it's one that I'm feeling good about. We have a great record in the Champions League this season.
This is not the Carabao Cup. That's all I'm going to say about that. Oh man, what a! I say a night. It was night in London. It was the afternoon. It was middle of the afternoon here. But what a night it was. We'll talk about it.
It was night for me when I watched the replay later.
So you got a little more of the atmosphere, a little more of the proper atmospherics.
Exactly.
Did you see the tifo? Did you see the giant?
No, I missed it this time.
Oh, I'll pull up. I have something I'll show to you, or I'll link. I'll have in the notes, and we'll talk about it a little bit. It'll definitely give you a good look at it. But yes, we'll talk about that with the game. You do know what a tifo is, by the way.
Yes, that came up a couple weeks ago. That's the massive banners that they hang over the crowd, right?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, we saw one a couple weeks ago. It was Trossard with his goal goggles celebration. Yeah. Oh, cool. I can't wait to see it. Listening back to last week's episode, I caught myself doing something that I know I've done in conversation. I don't remember doing it on the show before, but we were talking about some baseball stuff last week, and I referred to a baseball match, knowing full well that we don't use that term for American sports. It was a baseball game, but it's like the thing that you call when two teams play each other has just become a match in my mind. So the terminologies all bleed together.
It certainly makes sense given that soccer has sort of become your entryway into the broader universe of sport.
Yep.
We'll
be in real trouble if I ever start talking about like halves of the baseball game, or if I talk about innings in a soccer match or something. But
but then you're the sports ball guy, and we don't need that.
That was never me, even before I started watching the stuff seriously. Like, I always took it seriously. I was never derisive or dismissive or anything else that rhymes with those words about it all. So yeah. One other bit of follow-up, and this is going way, way back to our episodes talking about Fever Pitch, actually. So this is from last summer. Basically, I read the book and watched both movies, but you only joined me in the Arsenal-focused movie. We talked about those on the show. And I remember bringing something up about it not making sense to me why he was saying that for us to win the championship, which is what they called it back then, we tend to call it winning the Premier League or winning the trophy. I think calling it the championship gets confusing because of the second tier now being called the championship in England. But so back then, talking about winning the 89 championship against Liverpool, and he was explaining to people in the movie and or the book, and I just finished rereading the book, which is why this is fresh in my head now. But in the book, at least, and possibly the movie, he was talking about having to win by a certain number of points, which made absolutely no sense to me a year ago. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to try and fill in my own gaps here, because I think we've talked about this in the intervening months since then. So is the reason because back then it wasn't that necessarily goal difference wasn't the first tiebreaker, or maybe Liverpool and Arsenal were even on goal difference or something, but it was that goals away mattered, and like, so goals away counted twice as much as home goals, and that's why they needed to score a certain number of goals to make the difference? Or
no, it was so in those days, as today, the tiebreakers in order are, of course, points. More points you win. If you're tied on points, the first tiebreaker is then goal difference. Now,
Right.
as a result of this game, Arsenal, by winning 2-0 at Anfield, evened up the goal difference. They were both at plus 37. The third tiebreaker, which is what we ultimately got to, apparently at least per Wikipedia, the only time it's happened in the English top division, is goals scored.
Okay.
And at that point, so Arsenal finished that season, I'm looking at the standings, finished that season with 73 goals scored. Liverpool was 65. So basically, Arsenal had to win by 2 to make up the goal difference. And as a result, we're always going to, at that point, have scored more goals.
Right.
Apparently, that is still the order of tiebreakers. And it's only after that you get to, what is it? It's head to head. Yes. Head to head.
Head to head goals scored. Yeah.
No. Well, it's head to head results.
Oh, results, points. Right. It's the points from head to head competition.
Right. Which would, if we were to go that level with City, would not go very well for us.
Right. So the goals away, that was an old European convention. That was not in England.
Away goals was the tiebreaker in the knockout rounds.
Right.
And also in the Carabao Cup in that semifinal.
Oh, okay.
Used to be, and they've since gotten rid of that, which I don't. I mean, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, but I didn't mind that. It adds an interesting layer to those games, a strategic layer to those games. I mean, its odd ways could have dramatically changed the Bayern PSG setup, although not really. But but anyway, it's fine. It makes sense. Just tie, just go to extra time. I don't love that goals scored is is the next one. Like I head to head to me should be higher. That's my brain talking. Goal difference makes sense as a good tiebreaker, but I don't love that goals scored is ahead of head to head. But
I see that
again. It's so rare that comes into play.
Yeah. One other fever pitch thing while my head's in fever pitch. So he talks over the course of the book about a whole bunch of different cup competitions. Mm-hmm. How much of that is different sponsors of the League Cup, and how much of that is that Arsenal just used to play in a bunch of different cup competitions and they don't anymore?
No, those are the League Cup sponsors.
Okay, it was strictly just League Cup sponsors.
Yeah, that was it. There's Littlewoods. There's Milk.
Littlewoods was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. There's I forget all the names, but yeah, that one's cycled through a lot of different sponsors over the years. Carling, Capital One. That's more modern, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, that's not that's because the FA Cup is still the FA Cup. It's always been the FA Cup.
Right. Although it is now the Emirates FA Cup.
Yeah, but it's still the FA Cup.
They have to keep that in the name. Yeah. One last bit of follow-up, and this is directly from last week again. So we played ATLÉTI in the Estadio Metropolitano, right? And you mentioned during the episode that will be where the final is held next season. And that led me to wonder, since ATLÉTI made a very deep run that we thankfully ended this season, if they make it to the final, is it still held there?
Yep. Really the best analog to the Champions League final in the US is the Super Bowl. It's the biggest game of the biggest sport. And so the final locations are picked a couple years in advance. There's a lot of prep that goes into it. The tickets are going to be split 50-50. The only thing I think would be unusual there is I imagine that, for this year coming in, the winner of our semifinal was going to be the away team in the final. I suspect in that instance, had this been at ATLÉTI, that been the case next year, and ATLÉTI comes in as the away team, they'd probably still be allowed to use their home locker room.
Right.
But just when they come out, they would come out as the away team, and they would be treated in the bookkeeping sense as the away team.
Right. Okay. But that makes sense.
And this has happened before. Our most recently one was Bayern Munich hosted the final in 2012 against Chelsea in the Allianz, and then lost the game. Actually, they dominated but couldn't quite finish them off, and then Chelsea won in a shootout, and that was their first Champions League title. So it's happened a couple times over the years, but it's kind of rare in the sense that it's hard for a team it's hard for any particular team to make it that far.
Right.
And then you think about, some of the locations. Like when it goes to Paris, it goes to the Stade de France as opposed to the Parc des Princes where PSG plays. And when it goes to England, it's played at Wembley, which is nobody's home, or is everybody's home. I don't know. And ignoring this year in Budapest, like there are no Hungarian clubs that are going that deep in the Champions League.
Right. Yeah, and I guess that's what's different. It's always held. All the English cups are always held in neutral territory at Wembley, so there's no possibility for that. Yeah, makes sense. The first bit of news you thankfully shared with me live as it transpired this week. Manchester City dropped points. I was delighted. Thank you for sharing that with me. We don't usually talk about soccer stuff as it happens, but this is not Arsenal directly, and I'm glad you did.
Because I know you're a spoiler guy or not a spoiler guy. So, but this one, I knew you weren't going to go back and check this one later. I did watch City Everton, or rather, I should say, I had it on in the office. Of course, I wasn't watching; I was working. But anyway, I had the game on, and a bit of a wild game. We talked about it. The City team had drop points in them, and they did. It's only frustrating because it could have been all three for Everton. It took Jeremy Doku scoring a worldie in stoppage time.
Yeah,
man, almost. But that was the opening. That was it. That was the thing we needed. We talked about this, right? That was the thing we needed, and now it's just a question of. It was a sort of a great lead into Tuesday night to be able to walk in saying, holy cow, like it's on. It really is on. Everything is in our hands at this point. And yeah.
Well, and then I also saw yesterday, we're recording on Sunday. I saw yesterday Manchester City played Brentford and beat them 3-0, wiping out the goal difference that we accrued against Fulham, essentially. So should we draw either of our next two matches, and if it did come down to goal difference, those extra goals that we scored last week have kind of been canceled out. So that makes that a little bit tougher, but hopefully it doesn't get to that point.
Right. It was a little fresh. I mean, and that's always the thing with the goal difference. And we'll talk about this more when we start looking at the table and kind of the end of the games to come after this week. You start looking at not just the quality of the competition. I mean, of these final three games, I'm counting, today is Sunday. We're recording it after the West Ham game. Coming into our final three games, West Ham, even though they are the lowest team in the standings, this was arguably the toughest of our three remaining games.
Right.
So, City looks. You look at their remaining games, and they have their final game is Aston Villa, and for reasons we'll talk about there as well. That one probably is not going to be a super difficult one for them. So,
right.
They by dropping points, they put everything into our hands, which is in a sense that's ideally where you want to be.
Right.
And in that case, it's true both with the Champions League and the league. What do we have to do? Just win. That's it. That's all you need to do is just win. And then, so it was a fantastic start to the week, and just kind of puts a little pep in your step all the rest of the way of the week.
Yeah, I definitely felt that. It was especially fun when I went into the office and talked to the growing crowd of Gooners at the office. There's like three others now besides myself, so that's kind of fun.
That's a bandwagon effect. I'm not complaining about it, but
no, these are new people. These are new people to the company. These are not people that have been at the company that suddenly became Gooners. They're new hires. Okay. So maybe they're recent Arsenal converts, but I don't think so.
Could be. I mean, again, not complaining. If they're on board, welcome.
I love the turn of phrase, a little pep in your step, when that pep comes at the expense of Pep Guardiola. So in Arsenal news, we haven't really seen Jakub Kiwior this season. Where has he been?
He was sent on loan to Porto, FC Porto in Portugal. It seems to have worked out for them pretty well. They recently wrapped up the Portuguese title. and now have also wrapped up keeping Jakub Kiwior. I guess it was. I think you had said this. It was a loan with an option to buy, and they exercised said option. So
right, it was like when we got Raya a couple seasons ago, right?
Yeah, although I think the sense with Raya was it was a loan. And I think
obligation to buy.
Well, but like Hincapié is the same way. It's an option, but basically by doing that, we're pushing the actual financial cost to next season's accounts. So we're always going to do it. It's like we're keeping Pierre Hincapié. I don't know that it was necessarily as true that Porto was planning to keep Kiwior, although I do think Kiwior was not particularly keen on coming back to Arsenal. Mm-hmm. Not that he didn't like it here, but that his career opportunities would be better served going to other places. And, he did just win the Portuguese league, so I can't begrudge the guy. Probably, no, Poland didn't qualify for the World Cup, so we'll be doing that this summer. But
yeah, cool. Well, good for him. I hope he is able to have a long, prosperous career there and play more than he would have had he stayed with us. So good for him. We're going to the final.
Yes, that was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, it wasn't fun until the end, but I eventually got there. I mean, scoring right before halftime. And in a match that kind of did go back and forth, it wasn't like, it wasn't a fait accompli the whole time. It was a kind of slow going match some of the time, like the first leg was. But no, once the final whistle sounded, it was hoo boy.
For 1-0 to the Arsenal, as was written in the stars, 2-1 on aggregate. Just a Titanic performance from everyone, just outstanding up and down the lineup. It was a bit of a surprise, I think, to see MLS in the starting lineup. We talked a little bit about this with the Fulham game, right? I don't know, maybe his start was there to, give Zubimendi a rest and help rotate with Rice. Nope. Nobody was out there for the second leg, and he was good.
Yeah.
He had a really good night. Ben White looked as good as he has all year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, with Miles Lewis-Skelly, I mean, who knows what the thinking was with his appearance against Fulham, right? It may have been what we thought, as far as I can tell, but it may also be, like Arteta said, maybe I should have started playing him sooner. Like, it may have been that seeing him at Fulham changed his plans for what the next couple matches could bring. Like when you see that he's on and doing well in that position, maybe that, change the game plan when you see that he's in good form.
I mean, certainly the overall performance against Fulham, not just scoring the 3 goals, but the way we sort of just took the game to them, the kind of swashbuckling verve we were able to play with that we just really haven't seen, certainly a lot this calendar year, really haven't seen a lot on the whole this season, for all the reasons we've talked about. This isn't a criticism. But there was something interesting or different about that Fulham game, the way we clicked offensively.
Right.
And so, I don't begrudge the manager. It certainly makes sense that you want to run that lineup back. And then, we'll talk obviously more about this later. We ran the same lineup out there again for West Ham today. So clearly something here was clicking. And we saw Lewis-Skelly. It's kind of interesting because it feels like, oh my gosh, you're really going to trust this young guy in a Champions League semifinal? He played in the semifinal last year. Like this is he's an old pro at this. And arguably as a midfielder played in his more natural position this year as opposed to last year when we had him as the left back.
Yeah, it was good seeing him out there. He's been looking good. Circling back to before the match began a little bit, so just reading news, match day. The match hadn't started yet, so I wasn't in like spoiler lockdown mode of not looking at sports news until after I saw the replay. This was before the match had happened. I saw a funny headline. Apparently, some zealous Londoners took it upon themselves to disrupt the sleep of the ATLÉTI team in their hotel in London with, was it 1 a.m., 2 a.m. fireworks?
Yeah.
Those wascally kids.
This is a thing that happens. You see stories for years about, guys driving around the hotel, just circling around the hotel in their cars, honking their horns all night, fire alarms getting pulled. Like, these are the sorts of things that happen. Obviously, the fire alarm ones, I was a little like, okay, let's not do that. But I mean,
overboard. That's a felony.
Yeah, it is, and that's that.
At least here, I don't know about England, but yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you can you can understand, like, it's not a surprise these sorts of things happen. There was a sense this was not their regular hotel. They stayed in a different part of London, which Simeone joked it was because this was a cheaper hotel. I think, or they were, was it superstitious? Because of course the last trip they came to London was 4-0 to the Arsenal.
Yeah,
It could have been that kind of subterfuge. It could have been, let's not stay at the regular place and let's avoid this kind of thing. They filed a complaint with UEFA, but I mean, everyone involved is kind of like,
it's not.
What do you do about that?
Exactly. I mean, it's no one's fault. I mean, yeah.
Well, no, we know whose fault it is. It was whoever's just setting fireworks. Those guys are the ones whose fault it is.
No one in or related to the club.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No one who UEFA could hold responsible.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, so the action started, and we definitely came out swinging. We were firing on all cylinders. And thankfully, we did hold on to that momentum, at least midway into the second half. But before the half was over, we had a nice turn of play, right? Gyökeres got deep, crossed. Trossard took the shot. Did it bounce? Remind me, did it bounce off the post or the keeper?
No, the keeper made the save.
Yeah, so keeper
made the save.
Bukayo Saka was there
to put it in. I mean, first off, definitely ATLÉTI came into this game playing a more traditional away Champions League tie, European tie, right? They were sitting deep. They were going to doggedly defend. They're kind of play the more, certainly under Simeone, the more signature Atletico style, which is not something they've been playing with a lot this season.
Yeah.
But that was generally clearly what they were trying to do. And some of that was us as well. We came out strong, controlled possession, created some opportunities. But this one, I mean, honestly, the biggest credit on this one first is Gyökeres, who runs on the ball, taps it around the keeper. I mean, that's a deft little bit of skill.
Yeah.
The first guy was worried because he kind of ran himself out of the shot, but he just fires it across the box, ends up on Trossard's feet.
The keeper backed up in time to get back to the line, like he wasn't caught out. So that was good footwork for him. But yeah,
right. Shot saved, but there was Saka to pounce on it, and of course it was the Hale End Boy himself. It was Saka. It's 1-0, and yeah, you're right. Coming right before the half, I think really kind of settled a lot of things down. Because you can imagine, and again, we can point to today in West Ham, right? The longer it takes us to score that goal, the more tense it gets. And this is a game that's already the intensity is off the charts to begin with because of the environment, because of the situation you're dealing with. But I think to get that goal, one, just to convert the opportunities we were creating, and then two, to sort of take that pressure off you, because now if you're Atletico Madrid, you have to open up a little bit. And they probably weren't going to. They still did, as we saw in the second half, sitting back a little deeper as well, trying to spring on the counter, which they were dangerous on. I mean, you talked about their attacking talent. But yeah, it's just... with Trossard with the shot, obviously because of our perspective, sort of above and looking down from the sideline view, the box looks pretty crowded, and so I try not to be one of those people who yells "shoot" every time it's the ball. But Trossard, gets that shot and finds a shot. It's a good save from All Black, but there's Saka found the space and just pokes it home, and that ended up being it, and just. It just changes the whole tenor of the game, especially as you're about to head into the half. So second half is a little different then.
Yeah, it's funny. Calling out shoot in our youth matches serves a completely different purpose. Like, there are kids who will not unless you call that out, which is arguably not as good for their development because they need to learn to do it on their own without being told by people. But yeah, it's a... But yeah, I mean, I also felt in this match... Julian Alvarez was not really a threat. We did whatever we needed to shut him down. Like, he had one or two chances early on, but most of the match, I didn't hear from him. I didn't know what he was doing. He wasn't really hurting us.
Yeah, I mean, certainly as far as certainly the most dangerous player out of ATLÉTI was I think Griezmann, who had a really nice game, put himself in some dangerous situations. he's a great player. He's had an excellent career. He's not, this was definitely a valedictory sort of performance for him because, as was pointed out, he'll be leaving for MLS for Orlando in the summer after the World Cup. He'll come to America. But spent a number of years, scored a bunch of goals at Atletico Madrid, and he was dangerous. He was probably their best offensive player today. Lookman was another one of their defenders. Yeah. He struggled a bit in these games. But honestly, the player that drove me nuts on Atleti was Koke. Just he was freaking. He was a tough guy. He was a tough guy to shake. It's so perfectly an Atletico Madrid player, and I say that with a certain amount of love and respect. I've told you I'm not here to take too many shots at Atletico Madrid. I get why they do what they do, and they're very good at it, and you have to appreciate it, and it's a lot of fun when it's happening to other people.
Right.
But yes, Koke was both in his ability to be physical without committing fouls, but also his seeming ability to attract fouls are very frustrating to deal with. But anyway, good vibes tonight. Good vibes on this.
Yeah. Well, okay. You're saying good vibes. The next thing I have on my list to talk with you about was a play kind of late. This was in the 81st minute. We had Gyökeres was breaking down the field, and really what you could maybe call a last defender was chasing him down, and did more than chase him down, grabbed him by the shirt and threw him down, as it turns out. So he was given a yellow card. This is Pubil, I think was the player's name. Was it just me, or did that kind of look like it could have been an obvious goal-scoring opportunity that may have been denied?
That, first off, Gyökeres really gets nothing from the referees. It really is incredible. And he's a physical player, too. He initiates a lot of contact, so this isn't entirely him being targeted. But he takes a lot of physical abuse. This should have been a red. I'm sorry. Like, there's nobody else there. He's not far wide the way it was when we talked about the Newcastle game. What is it, the weekend before? I'm a little surprised that hasn't been made a little bit more of. Like, there's no one else in the picture. It's just
right.
It was stunning to me, and it took that before they finally called the foul and gave the yellow. I'm glad it didn't end up meaning anything ultimately. But
that's ultimately why no one's probably talking about it, is because it's kind of a footnote. We ended up winning.
And look, there were a couple of interesting penalty shouts, or not quite penalties. A short, early in the game, Trossard got bumped over in the box. That was about 10 minutes before the goal. It would have been soft, but also like kind of barges into it without making play on the ball. That's a foul in other parts of the field. There was another one going the other way that I think it was Calafiori who very clearly fouled the Atletico player in the box, but ends up getting pulled back, not for that, but because immediately before them, an Atletico attacker had fouled one of our defenders. I think it was Gabriel. So there's a lot of those kind of borderline moments and borderline sort of things throughout the game. Obviously, we're a little more attuned to that because of what happened in the first leg, I think, with 3 penalties, and then one being, obviously, the last one being rescinded. I don't have like deep thoughts on the refereeing from this game overall, but it was just, but that moment frustrated me. That's like, it was a completely cynical challenge. Like, there's nothing in it where he's trying to play the ball. He pulled the guy back by the shoulder. I'm not sure what else you're supposed to be looking for in that instance, but.
Yeah. And then things got really crazy about, 10, 12 minutes later. Like, everybody was kung fu fighting or something. There was a lot of disturbance, a lot of yellow cards given out.
Yeah, this definitely falls under the category of what you'll hear sometimes in English commentary as handbags.
Okay.
So just like imagine like a handbag, like a purse, just swinging, just
Gotcha.
slap fighting. It got a little wild. Obviously, the ball's going out down there, both because it's their style and because obviously this is stoppage time of the game. Both Simeone and Arteta have just completely lost contain on the coach's box. They're completely different. They're basically just on the field at that point. The Arsenal players are up because they're it's in stoppage time. They're getting ready to run onto the field and celebrate. But of course, they're barking at the ATLÉTI players, and it's Simeone. They're barking back. Andrea Berto was in the middle there somewhere. I remember he used to work for Atlético Madrid, and so he knows Simeone. And I get the impression that, not saying they have a bad relationship, but in the intensity of the moment, maybe Berto was reminded why he was okay to leave Atlético Madrid. That's maybe the best way to think about that. And so, and the referee, kind of starts pulling up the cards. Obviously, both coaches get it. Koke finally, of all the things that Koke did that game, that was the yellow card, okay? And then one was shown to our sideline. It looked like at the time, I kind of thought it was Calafiori because I saw him getting pushed back towards the bench. But apparently in the scorecard, it was Kepa, Aretha Balaga, who actually got the yellow. So, interesting.
Yeah. I'm watching it back on the full match replay on Paramount Plus, and one thing I meant to ask you about this, just kind of strange to me, is every match I've ever seen in the Champions League, all the captains always have the same armband. It's a dark blue with white lettering, and it's a UEFA Champions League captain's armband. ATLÉTI, their captain, it's a different one. It's like it's all red with the ATLÉTI crest on it, and I think that may have been Koke who had it on. Why do they get their own armband? That's kind of weird.
I don't know. I can't say I even know this. One of those things, Maybe they have the option too, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, and Arsenal just doesn't care. Maybe, yeah. But anyway.
I got nothing on that.
So, but ultimately, that was just kind of the prelude to those players who were ready, just running out on the pitch and let the celebrations begin.
The whistle goes, and we're going to the Champions League final.
Yeah.
There was a lot of dancing. It was a good time.
It's been, 20 years since the last one?
20 years exactly. It was the final season at Highbury. It was, I was a young schoolboy. Well, okay, college junior, but still a young college junior, finishing my study abroad in London, in Islington.
Right.
It's I was not there. I actually flew back the day before the final, the actual day of the final. I watched on TV in the U.S. But I was there. We were in I cannot remember for the life of me the name of the pub. I'm sure it's not called that anymore, but whatever it's called then. Watching there in a jam pub in the semifinal, the second leg against Villarreal, where Jens Lehmann stones a penalty from Juan Roman Riquelme. Not quite in stoppage time, but towards the end of regular time to preserve a 1-0 win, what was a 1-0 overall. We had beaten them 1-0 at home. And so the second leg, we held them to a scoreless draw. And of course, in a pub surrounded by North Londoners, like Arsenal fans, and there we are all celebrating. I kind of wish, obviously I was at work, I could not be with the gang or whoever was there. Obviously it was a Tuesday, so people have real jobs, but there were some folks down there. I'm sure the celebrations went on for a little while. It's oh man, this feels, I tell you what, for 20 years it's really kind of crazy, to sort of think about, get reflective in these moments, right? Think about all the kind of ups and downs that Arsenal's had over those 20 years. Obviously, you have a slightly shorter time horizon, so before I wax poetic for a bit, I mean, for you, that whistle goes and it kind of sinks into you. Oh my gosh, we're going to the Champions League final. Like, where are you emotionally in all this?
Yeah, more excited than for the Carabao Cup final, just because now I've seen one final. Like, I kind of know what to expect a little bit. And I realize this is on a different level, but in the same vein, right? A little nervous because, you know, I've seen us play against Bayern and PSG fairly recently. This season we did well against Bayern, but the last time we faced them in a knockout round, they knocked us out in the quarterfinal. The next year, PSG knocked us out in the semifinal. So, you know, there's a little bit of trepidation. And now seeing that it's going to be PSG who we face, you know, I think we're a stronger team this year. I think we have really great chances, but there is a little bit of that, oh boy, let's do it.
Yeah. It's interesting because, and you'll see this a little bit too, and obviously we made the comparison to the Super Bowl. The conference championship games, the winners go to the Super Bowl. It's the same kind of thing there, where because this is played at your home stadium or at somebody's home stadium, it's a slightly different atmosphere. The champions of the final it's a little sterile. I mean, obviously both sides have fans there, but obviously it's much more staged. It's much more rehearsed. Obviously your fans are in a particular part of the stadium. As opposed to this was at home and you're kind of surrounded, so you get that moment of emotion. And even then, 20 years ago, that game we won that second leg that was in Spain. So the biggest game, arguably the biggest moment in the history of the Emirates. I say arguably it's the biggest moment in the history of the Emirates. Certainly the best moment I think Arsenal's had since moving there, because that Champions League run was the final season at Highbury as well. So, it's exciting. It'll hit. I'm wondering when it'll hit me, because I've had those moments. Again, point of comparison, the Super Bowl, when the few times the Giants have made it, it's interesting. There's a moment somewhere between when you win the conference title game and when the game starts. You're going to have this moment where you actually sort of realize that it kind of sinks in and you're like, oh my God, we're in the champion. Like it kind of, it's, and I remember because I was in graduate school that the Giants went to two Super Bowls, 2007, 2011. In 2007, I had that moment like an hour before kickoff. Like I'm about to head to a friend's house to watch the game. And all of a sudden I'm just sitting at my desk going, oh my God, I'm about to watch something like that. The other one was like the day after the conference title game. So it's kind of interesting how that moment at some point will sink into you. Oh my God, this is happening. And just to think about it, obviously we'll talk a little bit more about them a little bit. It's Paris Saint-Germain. So there's something a little familiar, obviously having seen them a year ago, right around this time. So we'll talk more about that, I guess, as we start. Just toward the end, we start talking about the broader season implications. But we'll have more to say about the Champions League going forward. But for now, it's just so great. It's just so great.
Yeah. Come on, you Gunners.
And then we had to pull it together because we had another game to play this weekend.
No, that's true. So we come down from the high of winning the semifinal round in the Champions League to then face a very different kind of pressure in this West Ham match, right? So on the one hand, we're top of the table. They're in the relegation zone at the beginning, at kickoff, right? And we're hoping to keep them there, basically. And that makes it complicated. Like if they'd already clinched relegation, or if they were middle of a table but performing badly, having a bad run of form, we don't care as much about this. But because like they had something to fight for and we did, and they're kind of opposite things, and theirs is arguably an even greater battle, and were they equipped to fight it, this might have gone badly. But it was a momentous match.
Yeah, I mean, obviously for us, just from Arsenal's perspective, just like coming down from the high of Tuesday night. And thank goodness it was Tuesday to Sunday. We had a lot of time to kind of... So, like, there's an emotional kind of reset you have to do there. And I think that sort of gets underrated at times. So it was nice that we were able to have those few days to sort of get settled. As you point out there, we're facing a West Ham team that's desperate. Bear in mind, too, this game is coming in the aftermath of City dropping points in the Monday game against Everton. So the door's now open. We the old phrase is control your own destiny, right? We it's all in our hands now. All we have to do is get results, and we'll win. But City then turns around on Saturday and they beat Brentford 3-0. That game was tight for a little while, but they were able to grab the goal and break it open in the second half. That kind of puts a little bit of pressure back on you to say, okay, let's lock in, let's get back. Because, based on the table and other things we'll talk about sort of at the end, this is arguably the toughest game we had remaining in the league because of the desperation. The flip side of that coin, though, is there's a reason West Ham is fighting for relegation. Like, you do. Right. I mean, and look, I think they said this is their first loss at home since January. They had taken points off City in that stadium. Like, this was not not going to be an easy game. They're a team that has given us trouble. Arguably, some of our results against them cost us. Probably that you could argue West Ham was connected to costing us that title 2 years ago. And we finished just a point behind.
Right.
So this was a game where we had to go out and play. And honestly, for the first half, we came out and played.
Yeah. No, definitely. I was given pause a little bit once I heard the commentators mention in the second half that City and United both drew at London Stadium. So, those are our two closest rivals at the end of a season, as it turns out. And they didn't do so great there. I know.
Well, City let's not overstate where United is. Let's not overrate that.
Number 2 and number 3 on the table. Yeah. And by the way, the part of why it was remarkable that I heard the commentary in the second half was because I didn't hear any commentary in the first half. So I don't know. So if you recall from last week, I paid the extra $5 or whatever to get the 4K experience for this with YouTube TV, right? And so, yes, indeed, it was available in 4K. Did it look noticeably better than the 1080p? Maybe. My wife said, no, I can kind of see it a little bit. Maybe not. I don't know that it was necessarily worth it. I don't know if I'll keep it. We'll see. But I don't know if it was because this was a quote unquote recording, like a cloud DVR recording in 4K, or if it was completely unrelated and maybe you wouldn't know because in the pub, you can't really hear the commentary anyway. Maybe this affected everybody. I can't imagine so because it lasted throughout the entire first half. I didn't hear any commentary. All I heard was crowd noise. It was basically like I was sitting in London Stadium in like around the half field mark, just looking side to side and just hearing the roar of the crowd was all I could hear for that entire first half and the first like 5 minutes or so of the second half until finally I hear the dulcet tones of Graham Lasso. And all of a sudden I'm back hearing commentary on the match. It was weird.
It's not often one hears the term dulcet tones and Graham Lasso put together in the same sentence.
He's got that exotic accent, It's they all sound.
They're English. They all have that accent. It was. I mean, obviously, I guess listening to it is kind of it's interesting because you end up hearing bits and pieces of the commentary when there's that lull in the sound, and then usually you get a little bit of the commentary and someone in the bar angrily responds to what they've said. So you get the counter commentary as well.
It was also funny with this one. So we're wearing our change kit, the one that you were modeling on our show today. So we're wearing our change kit because the claret is clashing with our home white. It worked out very well, though. I don't know what color their home shorts are. I don't know if they're blue or if what they were wearing today, like the white or off-white that they're wearing today is this actual normal home kit short. But the way it worked out was very harmonious with us wearing like the white with maroon trim and them wearing the claret with the like off-white shorts. Like our jerseys were fully complementary. It's like a duotone pitch. It looked really nice aesthetically.
It was interesting. I am partial to the color combos we talked about, but it's interesting, especially because West Ham is very traditionally a claret and blue. Typically, it's the claret, like we're the red with white sleeves. They're claret with the blue, light blue, sky blue sleeves,
right?
Which I've always liked. I think it's a nice look. Aston Villa does it. Burnley has done it as well, and I don't. So it's a little disappointing that they went with just the blue on the trim this season. I know we're not going to do too much kit talk because it's there's 3 games left. They're not going to wear these much longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting. I think based on the schedule, we're probably done wearing the blue kit for the season for us. I think based on what we have left, it's going to be red or white. So yeah, but it did, and more importantly, I could tell the difference. That's the important thing. I knew who was on which team,
Yes.
and that's always that's the most important thing.
Oh yeah. So getting to the match itself, things start off pretty well. Calafiori actually started off really hot. He had a couple shots on goal, one of which was really close. And then midway through the first half, Ben White went down on the pitch. I don't know if it was a result. It looks like his foot kind of got stepped on. And I don't know if it was that or if it was the resulting tumble or what, but he didn't look too good.
Yeah, it looked like he got tangled up a little with whoever the West Ham player was as he went down. It did not look good. The trainer, they called out the trainer pretty quickly. He came out, and as White sort of went off on the far sideline, and that's when Zubimendi came in. He's basically like arm around he and the trainer have their arms around each other as they're walking around the field. That's not good. That did not look good at all. And I'm trying to find where I thought I saw the quote. It was a post-game quote from Arteta where he sort of said it's not good. I mean, we don't know yet because it's still fairly early, but it's not looking good. So I'm a little. That's disappointing. Obviously, we talked about the year he's had. I don't know that he was on track to find himself in the World Cup squad. With England, but obviously, we're at the point where an injury. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're announcing I think the U.S. has their preliminary roster. I'm looking at the calendar. They're going to announce something in 2 weeks. It's time. It's coming, and so that's a tough.
That stinks for him. Yeah.
Yeah. If it is, obviously, who knows? Sometimes maybe he goes in and he just gets rest and it's fine. But I don't know. Hopefully not. But
yeah. Well, on a more procedural question though, so he gets injured, he comes off. We're down to 10 men for I think it's 1 minute, or I think it's 1 minute is what England is observing right now. And actually, that led to their first shot on goal of the day was while we were down a man. I thought, though, that if you're substituting the player who required on-field medical attention, that you don't have to wait the minute because you're using one of your substitution windows and one of your substitutes.
I mean, I can't say I noticed anything in particular. I think it was a case where they pulled him off to get the treatment and they wanted to see if he could come back on. I saw...
okay. Because I saw Zubimendi had already taken off his training stuff at that point. Right. Zubimendi was ready to take the field already before he came off.
Right, but I do think you also need an actual stoppage as well for some substitutions. And I think part of what happened is since the ball was in play, I don't know. I wasn't carefully tracking all that.
Yeah.
My sense was they looked like they were... Because Zubimendi has to be ready. But it could easily be a case where they pull him off and Ben White goes, "Nah, man, I'm fine." And, just need to just walk it off and, then you're back on.
Right. Okay.
So, but I don't know. I didn't see anything there that said to me that's the direction they were going in, but I don't recall directly.
So when I saw Zubimendi suiting up to get out there, that was a surprise. I was expecting Nkapie or Mascara. That was interesting. What did you make of Zubimendi coming out for him?
Yeah, that was really interesting. And we had kind of a long conversation. We were kind of debating with each other. What do they do? What's the plan here? Is maybe Calafiori switch over to right back and Lewis-Skelly drops in at left back? Are we suddenly going 3 in the back now with Calafiori as a center back, and we're kind of using these guys use them as wing backs and not having a traditional left back or right back fullbacks?
Yeah,
I did not know. It was curious. What we ended up seeing is Declan Rice actually dropped back into the right back position, shades of Thomas Partey as right back.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard some speculation. Maybe the thought was that Rice would be able to work the link up with Saka, sort of help get him in the game, because Saka was quieter in this one. We talked about how great he was against Atletico. He was quieter in this game. And, maybe that would have worked, but whatever it was they were trying to do did not work. It did not. And so really credit to Arteta coming out of the half and actually making a substitution. Calafiori comes on for Mosquera, comes on for Calafiori. Lewis-Skelly drops back in at left back. Mosquera's going to play right back. Rice goes back into the midfield, and we were better.
Yeah.
Like that's basically, and then Zubimendi himself came off later, ended up coming off later in the second half. Now that was, I think, for a little more offensive firepower in the form of Havertz and Odegaard, but yeah, it's an interesting thing because we've been critical of Arteta when it comes to substitutions and the timing and the type. I think this is one that he got wrong, but fixed. Like he got wrong, saw it was wrong, or everyone's pointing to Gabriel Heinze because he seemed to be up talking to Arteta a lot. Maybe he pointed something out to him.
Right.
I don't know, but the decision got made that we're going to fix this.
Yeah,
and they fixed it, and we were better from that point. We were better there in the second half, and I think we were definitely a little bit better as well as we got into after the 67th minute, in the final third. Well, the final probably 20 minutes at that 30 minutes at that point when Odegaard came on. I mean, we've sort of missed it because he's been injured and out and injured and not playing well. Martin Odegaard just does so much to help organize this team better, and we definitely looked a lot better in that stretch after he came on and started pushing forward.
Yeah, no, just the glue that holds the midfield and even the forwards to some extent together. Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Should we talk about the goal or?
Yeah, well, so eventually, 15 minutes or so after that double sub, where, by the way, Havertz came back on. Havertz doing better, apparently. And also, curiously, Zubimendi coming off at that point, having played only like kind of 40 minutes in the middle of the match. And as far as we know, he wasn't injured. So not great for him today.
Yeah, that strikes me as a tactical sub. At that point, we're throwing attackers on. And Zubimendi, for all of his abilities, is not quite the same attacking player, and so you have to sacrifice you're sacrificing his defensibility because we needed a goal. Like that's the game state matters here. Like a 0-0 favors West Ham, and so we needed a goal, and I mean ultimately we got one.
Yeah, it was a really nice run of play, like you said, with Odegaard moving the ball around. I mean, we have Declan Rice, Odegaard gets the ball back. Rice gets the ball to Odegaard. Odegaard kicks it back to Trossard. And Trossard, how does he do that? He does this all the time where it doesn't look like there's a line to the goal. There are like 5 people between him and the goal line. And he just rifles it. And I don't know, I didn't really look closely. It deflected off of the defender's foot. There was a defender who stuck his foot out right in front of him. But like, how does he do that? He does that so regularly. It's crazy.
He's an aggressive shot taker. Like that's the kind of thing we've complained about from some of the other players, over the last year or so, right? That just some of them just won't shoot. And Trossard will pull the trigger and he saw an opening and it wasn't much of one, but it was enough. He got the shot off and it was deflected, but ultimately just a lot of power. And I mean, obviously, I'm with a group, and so we're reacting collectively, whereas you're myself. This one felt cathartic. Look at Trossard's celebration on that goal. Look at, I mean, we were bouncing off the walls at that point. It went a little nuts.
It felt very plausible this was going to end up a draw. And we're level, assuming that City wins their game in hand. It's like we're level with them on points. We're level in potential points.
Obviously they have the game in hand, but they got to get the result. Right. So, but obviously that would have been it would have been with them getting the draw on Monday. This was an opportunity. It was an opportunity for us to really sort of set our marker and stay out in front. And to miss that and to essentially go back even again would have been a huge miss. But my goodness, they found it.
And it was It was just, it happened so late too, where it was just like really, by that point, you're coming to terms with the real possibility of us dropping 2 points again. And then the goal comes and I was just like screaming. Like, it's like, oh my God, we did it. We did it. These sons of, we did it.
I mean, and honestly, I mean, we're a couple of minutes removed at this point in the game from David Raya making arguably the save of the season in terms of the circumstances, where he gets that kick save on Fernandes. I mean, we outplayed them. We were a better team. They were not set. They did not come out, and it's not a surprise given the circumstances, given what's at stake for them, given their manager Nuno. They were going to come out to muck things up, to play defensively. They played, this is going to sound more insulting than it is, they played like a championship team today. The championship is a rugged league. It is a rough and tumble a game down there. And that's what they played like. And there was a desperation to it. And then, again, circumstances being what they are, it makes a lot of sense. But, credit to us for, this is exactly what Arsenal 4 or 5 years ago, when people talk about Arsenal doesn't like physical play, we've struggled with this, and they wanted to play rough, and we had no problem with that, which is it's a refreshing change of pace, and to push that through. But they came in, they were going to be physical, muck things up. They weren't really looking to go forward a lot. They carved out a couple of opportunities, but for the most part, they were looking to sit back. They were looking to try and grab the 0-0. And then you finally see them opening up a bit after the goal, because, of course, now they're desperate. Now they need something. They need a result. Right. It was a little disappointing that we couldn't quite take advantage of that. That felt like it should have been a little more like the Everton game a couple of weeks ago, the one that ended with Max Dowman's, sort of coup de grace there at the end. It felt like it should have been more like that, but we were scrambling a little bit in those final stages.
Yeah. The physicality, like, I didn't mind it, except why does the referee why is he always blind? And not this referee in particular, just like any referee on any given day in the Premier League. Why are they blind to Gyökeres victimhood? Like, why is this not a thing? Why can he not get calls in his favor? I guess it's Saka too, to a certain extent. Like, the same thing kind of happens to him too, where it's just like foul after foul after foul, just constantly getting body checked, shoulder checked, hip checked, like just knocked all over the place, and it's never called.
Yeah, we talked about this in the context of the Champions League game too, right? I mean, he is a physical player. He goes in, he likes to bang bodies. He's a big guy, like, it makes sense. But yeah, it does feel like he takes a lot of unnecessary contact. Like, he should be getting more foul calls, and it seems like he never seems to get any sort of foul call, toward his favor, which is frustrating.
Bigger. It takes a harder check to knock him down in the first place.
Yeah, and again, we talked about the way the game is played these days. He has on a few occasions gone down easy. He's not innocent of that. But at a certain point, like, he's not getting. If he doesn't go down, then they assume it's not a foul. So you might as well. I don't know. It is a little annoying. I think this is probably the toughest situation we'll find related to that now in terms of the remainder of the season. But still, more importantly, it was nice to know that as a team, we were able to collectively force our way through it. Right. Which is, again, not something that we would have been able to say a few years ago.
Right. So that laid the groundwork for West Ham's last gasp, right? So we're in stoppage time, 5 minutes into a minimum 6 minutes of stoppage time, right? And they're awarded a corner kick. And they pull the goalie. I don't know. Is that the phrase for it? Do they use that in soccer? I know you pull the goalie in hockey. Is there a name for it in soccer, in English soccer?
No, you don't. Because in hockey, the idea of pulling him is the goalie goes to the bench and another player comes on.
Oh, okay.
Him. So in soccer, in this case, they usually just talk about the keeper comes up for the
right.
kick is what they.
Yeah, so it's spiritually the same kind of move. But yeah, so Hermansen, I think was his name. He's in the box alongside Raya, and I guess we're learning why the keepers wear different kits from each other. And they serve up a pretty well-placed corner kick.
It was a good ball.
It goes right into the middle of a 6-yard box. Raya gets his hands to it, but can't catch it, and it falls to the ground to be sent really hard into the goal. It bounces out, but it looked potentially, and you could definitely see it when they showed like, orthogonal to the goal line. You can definitely see it bounces off of Declan Rice, who was like standing in the middle of the goal at that point.
Oh yeah, it was Callum Wilson the shot. Yeah, that's definitely that's definitely across the line.
Yeah, definitely. Which leads me to wonder why Declan Rice was standing so far back. I guess he was probably overrunning after he was trying to tackle one of the American football tackle one of the players on West Ham.
He's just in whatever position he finds himself when that ball gets struck.
But so the referee points to the center of the pitch, like goal given, right? And then the VAR review begins. And it was another 3 minutes until the on-field official is called to the screen. Yeah, and then another minute before he renders his decision, right? And so we start seeing Mikel Arteta holding up his arm and hitting his own arm, basically indicating what they saw on their replay, that Raya's arms were obstructed, is what Arsenal is claiming, what Arteta is claiming, and what Raya is presumably telling the referee to his face. Seeing it in the replay over and over and over and over again. We saw this
quite a few times.
So many times. It is very clear that I don't remember the name of the player, but whatever player was obstructing Raya, not only to me was he holding his arm, which is apparently the key no-no. Not only that, but by having his arm in that position across Raya's entire body, across his throat and his chest, and then grabbing the far arm on the other side of Raya's body, he also impeded Raya from jumping up using his verticality to catch that. We know Raya catches that 9 times out of 10 or more, right? That's what he does, right? Yeah. And for him to only get fingertips so his feet don't leave the ground, he couldn't leave the ground. That to me was even worse than the arm being held in place, was that he couldn't jump. So the referee does end up calling it back. So I guess the 2 questions out of this that I would pose to you are, first of all, foul or not a foul? I think we probably would both agree that is a foul. But the more important question is, how do we feel in the context of certain other decisions going other ways against us recently? Given that the call on the field was that it was a goal, is this clear and obvious? Should this have been overturned is my big question. And I don't know how I necessarily fall on that, because I could see it both ways.
So we don't like the idea. I don't think this is perfectly fair. We don't like the idea of refereeing being situational, right? Like the idea that, well, I'm not going to give a yellow card because it's only the 3rd minute of the game. We don't like that idea, and I understand that. But a lot of what stemmed from this sort of the length of time taken for this review, because that's a fair criticism, is how long this all took.
Yeah,
and a lot of the post-game commentary, which I think is perfectly fair, settle around, look, for all the things we talked about, right? Because of what this goal potentially meant to both teams, as well as other teams in the league.
Yeah.
This was a potentially momentous event in the course of the season. And so the impetus really on the referees there is, this is one you want to get right. And they basically said, as they went through it, they basically looked at every single player in the box there to catch what was going on. Because you're right, there's a handful of them where Arsenal players basically tackling West Ham players. Their guys are pulling each other back. But basically what they look and saw was it was Pablo, who had his arm across Raya's, pulling him. There's another one was it was Todibo has Raya's jersey. You can see the view from behind him. It's clearly pulling the jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And Raya's unable to get to the ball. Now, are there other fouls in that circumstance in terms of Arsenal players and West Ham players? Yeah. But the one they're watching for is on the keeper. Keepers are protected in the box in those situations. And because of that, they're generally not going to call any of those other fouls, because the ball never gets to those guys. And Raya, presumably, can't assume it happens, presumably is able to get his hands on it and get control of the ball. So to the first question, is it a foul? Yes. Yes, it's a foul. Come on. What are we doing here? It's obviously a foul. I know what it looks like. I know, I get it. But also, come on. Like, if that's not a foul, there are no fouls. Just stop it.
Yeah.
In terms of the extra look on the replay, like, I understand that. And honestly, look, we've talked about this before. If you can't overturn it in, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever we said, it probably isn't clear and obvious. Okay, but that's not the way replay works. The referee's VAR gets to look at it as many times as he feels he needs to. And if that's the case, yes, to me, that was a clear and obvious error, especially important because it led directly to a goal-scoring opportunity, which I was turned into a goal. Right. So, and look, you're getting, I'm already seeing the comments about, well, Arsenal does this to other keepers. No, they don't. You show me. Show me where Arsenal, tackles another keeper. A lot of people are pointing to that opening day goal we scored against Manchester United. No. Saliba bodies him. There's definitely contact, but nothing like you saw. No grabbing, nothing like that. He just whiffs on the ball, and they're able to score there. So, is Arsenal physical on corners? Yes. But, if they weren't, everyone would be talking about how soft they are and, I guess they're just not good enough. Like, there's a level to this it's simply about just banter and the clicks and all those kinds of things, which, at this stage of the season, all I'm going to say is they'll like us when we win.
Yeah.
Like, they don't ask how, they ask how many. And we're at that stage, and look, again, the momentousness here, and to get it, I think it was the right call. Obviously, I'm happy they took the time to do it that way. Is that inconsistent with how VAR has been used across the? Not really, in the sense that there's kind of a lot of gray area in how they use this. So, in a sense, that has been consistently inconsistent.
It's maybe inconsistent with how they say VAR is supposed to be used, but it is not inconsistent with how it has been applied, at least over the course of this season, leaving other seasons aside. This is consistent with that, yeah.
But I would say it's consistent insofar as, again, if the standard is clear and obvious error, no foul was called on the play. You look at the replay, there is very clearly a foul that directly leads to a goal being scored. That's what this is for.
Right.
And so in that sense, would I have liked the decision to have been a little quicker? Yes. It was a very tense time waiting on the decision. But it was the right call. But it's the right call. I mean, that's really what happened.
One thing, as I was watching this unfold, as I was waiting for the result and watching that over and over and over again, one possibility, I want you to tell me if this is actually a possibility. One thing that I thought could end up being the outcome, given how much contact there was from Arsenal on West Ham players simultaneously to the West Ham on Raya contact, was it a possibility to call back their goal but then give a penalty? Like, could that have happened?
No,
it seemed plausible to me.
No, because the foul supersedes everything else. Because the foul on the keeper, basically, if you assume that the referee calls the foul as it happens, then the play is immediately dead.
Okay.
Unless the replay caught, like, I don't know, Saliba spiking some guy in the Achilles right before the free kick comes in. I don't know. Like, unless you catch something else that you hadn't otherwise seen.
Before the foul on Raya.
Right. And so once the foul on Raya takes place, and even then, they've been consistency. They've been consistent about, like, not calling fouls on the pre-kick wrestling. Like, basically before the ball is kicked, they let a lot go. Usually what happens is the referees hold up the kick, walk in, separate players, try to...
Yeah.
But they generally don't call fouls in those instances. No, and so, again, this is kind of the way it's been done. So...
Yeah. Well, a crazy conclusion to a crazy important game. I'm glad it went that way. It's been an all-round good week as a Gooner. It's a crazy ride, but I'm glad we got there.
Yeah, we can exhale for a couple of days at least.
Yeah. Who is your player of the week?
My player of the week, definitely the man of today's match, the West Ham game. And honestly, I know we have a couple games left, but I'm kind of leaning towards him as my player of the season. I have to go with David Raya.
Mm-hmm.
He was outstanding. Officially clinched, by the way, the Golden Glove all to himself. Actually, I believe officially did that when no one know because Donnarumma had a shutout on Saturday. So yeah, officially clinched the Golden Glove for himself with the shutout today. Just an excellent performance all around. Obviously, pitched the shutout, did really well against Atletico as well. I mean, his only error was the penalty, which what are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
He's just been outstanding in the back, and I think he doesn't get as much credit as he deserves. In part because of how excellent our overall defense is. Obviously, Saliba, Gabriel, but our defense as a whole. But man,
Mm-hmm.
he was immense today. And again, arguably no save bigger than that one on Fernandez
Oh, yeah.
shortly before we scored.
So, yeah, I mean, for me, I fully agree. Raya, player of the week. Let's just talk about that save. We didn't really talk about it in the course of talking about the whole West Ham match. I mean, I literally use that as a case study today in telling my son, the goalkeeper, like, this is how you handle a 1v1 situation. And I've talked to him about this over the last couple of weeks because he gave up a 1v1 type goal like that a week or two ago, and he didn't do what Raya did. He didn't go to the player, stretch his arms out, make himself big. What Raya also did here that was super key was not committing to one direction or another until the ball was kicked. So waiting like to spring into action until he knew exactly where it was going. Just beautiful. Did exactly what was needed. And that really laid the groundwork for the goal that we ended up scoring a couple minutes later. It was really, really a huge moment at his hands, literally. Well, actually, not literally because it was off his thigh.
It was more of his feet, but
yeah.
I mean, honestly, like when I saw that pass get in and when I saw Fernandez turn to the ball, like my heart sank. Like I thought, oh no, not again. And I go with that save. I just, again, and he's had better like technical saves. Of course, we're thinking Brighton back in December, right around Christmas.
Yeah.
But for that save and that spot and that moment, I mean, it didn't win us the title, obviously, because we haven't done that yet. And of course we still needed the goal later. But man, he's been immense all season, and I don't. I think again, I don't think he gets the credit he deserves nationally, in part because of the team's overall defensive performance. But he's been great, and he was great. And he's a big part of why we are where we are, top of the table with two games to play, and in the Champions League final.
Yeah, he's so great that they literally need to hold him down to stop him from saving the ball. We're still top of the table, baby. It's really, really getting down to the wire. 2 games left to play. And yeah, City have a match in hand, but even if they win that, we're still ahead of them. It's feeling good.
Yeah, So just a few notes on the table, just what we're looking at. So because things are getting clinched, things are getting wrapped up.
Right.
Barcelona won La Liga earlier today by beating Real Madrid. It's apparently the first time Barcelona's ever won the league in an El Clasico match. So congrats to them. Speaking of clubs that are imploding, wow. We don't have time to talk about that, but my goodness. Yeah. So. Arsenal, we talked about this. Arsenal, Manchester City, and Manchester United have all clinched their spots in next year's Champions League. Liverpool and Aston Villa, sitting in 4th and 5th, have clinched spots in Europe. It's not 100% clear which competition they'll be in yet, although I think both of them have a pretty good shout for the Champions League spots. Bournemouth and Brighton currently hold down the remaining 2 spots in the standings. Brentford, though, is just behind them. Chelsea, Everton, Fulham, Sunderland, even to a certain, well, not Newcastle. That's probably too far gone at this point. But I mean,
yeah,
it's still kind of tight in there, and there's still some opportunities left for teams to work their way into those European spots. On the other end of the table, today's results, particularly West Ham's defeat, seals their spot next year for Nottingham Forest and Leeds. So in terms of next year's Premier League, 18 spots have been secured. Of course, you have the spots 1 through 16 in the table. We know Burnley and Wolves are definitely going down. We know Coventry and Ipswich are coming up. The promotion playoffs have begun. They'll play the first legs earlier this weekend. They'll play the second legs of those semifinals this coming weekend. And then really it just comes down to that last relegation spot. Spurs leads West Ham by a point. They have a game in hand, but they will be playing Leeds at home tomorrow, Monday, and that's going to be and that'll be an interesting one to go see. Spurs definitely have, I think, obviously they have the advantage in terms of their place in the standings. They're a point ahead, but they close the season with Chelsea and Everton, whereas West Ham will close their season with Newcastle and Leeds. So kind of interesting to see how that will.
Yeah, stiffer competition for Spurs, it sounds like.
A little bit, especially in the context of, Leeds is secure. They're not going anywhere. Their season's basically done. So that could be a benefit because Spurs plays them tomorrow. But then they have Chelsea and Everton, as we saw, are still very much in the hunt for European spots. West Ham has Newcastle and Leeds. We mentioned Leeds. Newcastle's technically still in the European hunt, but I think they're probably... they're actually. I look at this. They can only get to 52. They can't get into the top 7. So
right.
Yeah, you got 2 teams there that are kind of already done. Which goes a little bit into our situation as well. You look at the teams we're going to play left. We have Burnley at home, who's currently relegated. Their season's over, and then we have Crystal Palace, who we should mention, by the way. First off, Arsenal's in the Champions League final. I don't know if you've heard. Maybe we haven't talked about it enough. Like it's been 30 seconds, so we haven't said it. But Aston Villa will play the Europa League final the Thursday before the final weekend. They're going to face SC Freiburg, which would clinch their spot in the Champions League for next year, regardless of where they finish in the standings if they win the Europa League. Which, by the way, that game will be 4 days before they play Manchester City on the final day of the season. So honestly, I don't expect anything out of Villa in that game. I expect City to win that final game. The other one we're looking at, the Europa Conference League final, another English team, Crystal Palace, will take on Rayo Vallecano. Palace, that game will be held on the Thursday after the Premier League season ends. So about 4 days after we play Palace in the final game. So I thoroughly expect us to do pretty well in there. Again, playing a Burnley team that's already done, Palace team whose attention is elsewhere. Today was probably the toughest game. Now, I say that, no easy games in the Premier League, no gimmies. We gotta win them, but that's kind of what we're looking at there as we head towards the end of the season. But it's, you can't just look at where teams are in the standings. There's this other layer in terms of where they are. And Palace has basically already come out and said they're probably going to rotate players because, winning the Europa Conference League is a big freaking deal for Crystal Palace.
And they're not doing it doesn't matter anymore what happens in the Premier League for them. They're not going. No, they're not going down. Yeah, they're
secure. They're not going to get into one of the European spots. They're definitely not getting relegated. Now, this is that's the only thing that matters for them now.
And winning the Conference League, does that secure them like a Europa League spot for next season or something?
Automatic spot in Europa League.
Yeah, so exactly. So that's their only ticket to glory. So put all their eggs in that basket, please.
and by the way, there's also still the bit we mentioned Chelsea, in terms of fighting for European spots. They play the FA Cup on Saturday. If they win that, they get it. That's a spot in the Europa League. So you could be looking. There's like some of those goofy scenarios where there's like 9 English teams in European competition next year.
Goofy, but probably not all going to play far-fetched.
Yeah, probably not going to play out that way, but it's not crazy to think of.
Yeah, it's crazy how well that we've done as well. Boy, that is really stretching the definition of we. I'm used to saying we when we're talking about Arsenal. Using we talking about the whole country of England might be a bridge too far.
For us especially. I mean, look, the Premier League, and it's fine. It's largely financially driven, but the Premier League is the deepest league in the world. It credits to Barcelona and Bayern and PSG for winning their leagues, but I mean, those leagues are not as difficult. They're just not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. It was funny. I was at the trading card store with my son yesterday, and they have like big boxes of like individual unwrapped cards that you can rifle through and make your selections. They're like $1 each or something. And he likes going through. They only have 2 boxes of soccer. Like they've got like dozens for baseball and other sports, but like 2 soccer boxes. He's just going through, pulling all the Arsenal players he could find, and he was just like, all of them that he was grabbing were all from 3 seasons ago in the Europa League, which was kind of funny. Just how far we've come since that season. And oh boy, Sammy Lakonga and Eddie Nketiah and all these players who are no longer with our club.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We're gonna play a little game of that when we get to the end of the season recap episode, but we'll deal with that in a couple. We still have a few more important things to deal with before we get there.
Right. What's coming up for next week? And I guess I'm going to use the term week broadly. I'm going to use it in the Beatles sense of 8 days a week here.
Yeah, that's kind of where we are. First, we should point out, because obviously we're keeping an eye on Manchester City. The City host Palace. They're finally making up that game from the Carabao Cup weekend. City Palace will be Wednesday on USA Network here in the US. So that'll be a mid-afternoon game because it's midweek, so nighttime, prime time, and in the UK. That sets us up for Arsenal Monday against Burnley. That's going to be next Monday. So not tomorrow Monday, but the following Monday. Right. It is our home finale. It'll be somewhere on the NBC universe of networks. And just a note, again, I don't think this will happen because Palace is rotating and all that stuff. If City drop points on Wednesday, a draw or a loss, doesn't matter. If they drop points, a win against Burnley would clinch the title.
That's exciting.
I don't think it's going to happen. I think City's going to beat Palace. I think Palace is rotating and prepping for the Europa League final. Good for them, but just something to keep in mind for everyone. If they drop points, the trophy's probably in the building on Monday. That's all I'm going to say.
Now, let me ask you, we talked about earlier with our game against Palace in a couple weeks, that's our season finale, that their mind is all on Europa League final. We don't expect much from them as far as lineup, that they're going to be resting their best players. How much is that the case this week against City, like a couple weeks out?
I mean, they're going to be careful. Like, I don't think you're going to see a fully rotated lineup necessarily, but they are, I think, going to be careful. And so it wouldn't surprise me more if you start to see some guys get pulled off earlier. Like, some of their regular starters maybe get pulled off at 60 or 70 minutes. So it might be a case where they do that or just try some different things. Or guys who, because we've seen this too, some of our players kind of run ourselves into the ground. A guy, normally he would start against City, but honestly, he needs a breather. And because Palace has been doing the 2 games a week thing now for a good chunk of their season, and their roster is nowhere near as deep as ours or City's. So I could easily see them even rotating at this stage just to get guys some breathers. But City's going to have to be careful too. They play Palace on Wednesday. They play Chelsea on Saturday for the FA Cup. And then they play, I think it's Brentford. They play another makeup game in the Premier League on Tuesday, the day after we play Burnley. So there's another scenario. Arsenal beats Burnley. City drops points to Bournemouth because they just played Brentford. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
That might be that again. We're at that point where the numbers, that's the numbers we're looking at. It could be, it's prepare yourselves, Arsenal fans. The math is involved. The math is simple now. So
the math is simple. Only 2 games left to play, or maybe 3 if you're City. Yeah. Oh boy. Thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to the podcast version of our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, why don't you try watching us on YouTube with the link in the show notes. See our lovely faces. Your homework for today is to make sure you're subscribed. Already subscribed where you're listening or watching? Well, try another platform like YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram. We record the show using Zencastr. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our socials. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
because we are the famous Arsenal and we're going to Hungary.